Four hot takes that Lucas Kaplan put out that we get to react to here on the show today that could alter the way we look at this Nets season. What's going on, Nets fans? Welcome back to the Brooklyn Boys Show. I am your host, Josh Woolever, here on this Thursday evening, August 21st. Thank you all for tuning in. Smash the like button and hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Here on this August evening. It's beautiful outside, and we get to talk some Brooklyn Nets basketball, which is always a treat. Smash like, hit subscribe, more importantly. Throw any and all questions, comments, thoughts right there into the chat. I want to hear from you guys what you have to hear on Lucas Kaplan's takes. He went on Locked On Nets with Eric Slater, both of those guys friends of the show, so kind of cool moment there that they're both breaking it down together on a podcast episode. I've had Eric on, and he'll be coming back on soon. Connor's had Lucas on, so very cool full circle moment there for the Brooklyn Boys show. But you have Kaplan and Slater chopping it up. An awesome episode on Locked On Nets. If you haven't viewed it there, go check it out. And then earlier this morning, Lucas Kaplan puts out an article detailing what they talked about on the show. So if you didn't get a chance to see it there, you can see it in article form right here on the show. Lucas Kaplan puts out 4 fiery hot takes that we get to react to live on the show. You'll hear from about how likely I think it is to happen and what it would mean for this Nets team if it were to happen. But again, smash the like button, hit subscribe, helps us grow tremendously right here on the Brooklyn Boys channel. You're listening live on YouTube on our road to 500 subscribers. So takes 2 seconds. It's free. Right below this video, like and subscribe helps grow the channel a ton and pushes this content out to fellow Nets fans so we can grow this community together. Again, appreciate you all. You guys are the best sticking with us on August 21st, depths of the offseason. But again, Lucas Kaplan and Eric Slater chop it up on Locked On Nets, and now we get to react to a couple of their fiery hot takes, starting with this take from Lucas Kaplan. Yegor Dielman makes all rookie first team. We'll go through what Kaplan has to say and then react to it live on the show. He says, quote, I know, quite the messenger, but here's how I can see it happening. Yegor Dielman should have a real opportunity to put up counting stats this season, playing for an offense that hopes to push the pace and take plenty of three-pointers. I don't think he'll be a positive impact player his rookie season, but that's a tremendous bar for any rookie ball handler to clear. Virtually all impact metrics had Stephon Castle, the 2025 Rookie of the Year, as a negative player, and that's okay. If Dielman can convert his catch-and-shoot three-pointers at a reasonable clip, he'll walk into 14, 5, and 6 games, assuming he plays enough. I also trust Jordi Fernandez, whose team ranks in the top 3 of pick-and-roll dribble handoff frequency last year, to scheme Dielman downhill. We've covered his flaws as a driver and ball handler extensively, and we'll probably do it some more, but there's no question that you can map the court out of the pick-and-roll. Come off a screen, come off another one, and receive a handoff. The defense might make the decision for you. Look, a fiery take here considering how stacked this rookie draft class was, especially, you look up and down the top of that ladder, you're looking at the face of Cooper Flagg and the dual record star. You have Bailey and Harper and, a bunch of guys that you would line up certainly in front of Yegor Dielman in terms of predicting what the all-rookie first team and all-rookie second team will look like at the preseason point. But I think what Lucas is trying to get at, right here in the article is that it doesn't need to be a perfect rookie season for Dielman for this goal to be able to be accomplished, because I think he makes a big point when he says that he just has to convert enough of his of his catch and shoot threes, because he's a good enough passer to be able to distribute the ball elsewhere and pick up assists that way. So he trusts his stuff there, and then from 3-point range, if he's knocking down, doesn't have to be making crazy plays and ISO scoring and hitting step backs like we see a guy like Cam Thomas do. He just has to be good enough to convert when he needs to. If he's wide open in the corner and you're kicking it out there, he has to be able to make a shot like that. So I think it's fair to say that Dielman could potentially raise expectations for what we're looking at as a three-point shooter and play better in that regard of things. But look, what Dioman really brings to you is a two-way, efficient on both ends of the floor guy who, yeah, he can knock down a three, but more importantly, he's more of an inside the arc guy, and you have to be willing to also give him those looks from mid range and inside. He's a crafty guard that can get downhill. So I think absolutely Lucas makes a great point when he says that if he can shoot the three ball well, especially in times when he's called on to do so, he can be a big plus for this Brooklyn Nets team. But I also think that this system and the pick and roll offense that Lucas Kaplan highlights later in the article shows why he'll have the ability to get inside the paint, get into the lane, drive, use his quickness, and use his bigger body there in regards to being a point guard, use his size as an advantage and translate that to the NBA level because he's not a point guard that all he does is bury threes from the outside, and he can be a plus defender on the defensive end of the floor. So being able to use him versatilely on offense, I think, is going to be a big part of this. But as for all rookie first team, we're talking about hot takes here, so this is certainly one that is a very fiery, but to me, it's just a little bit beyond my reach. Tillman would have to come out of the gates fiery for a rookie season, especially in this loaded of a draft class in terms of, other guys that he would be going up against to try to take this award away from. So definitely is a hot take there, but I could see it happening. The only way I see it happening, first of all, Dioman's got to stay healthy because they hate giving awards to guys who are playing 60 or less games. So that's number one. Number two is he has to be able to adjust to the NBA level and adjust to Jordi Fernandez's system pretty quickly, relative to this only being a this year thing. And honestly, if the Nets are playing last place basketball, like we'll get into later in this video, it might be an issue for Dillman to, be a high quality facilitator and also be able to take matters into his own hands and score the basketball himself. Especially if this Nets team is just getting beat up constantly. A bad team is going to denigrate stats no matter what way you look at it. If he's making good passes, but he's not getting assists because other guys can't knock down shots, that denigrates you there. And then if teams are able to scheme up defensively against you because you don't have many threats around yourself, that obviously is also going to be a struggle for Geoman. So it's going to be a tough task in a bottom of the tier Nets offense, and I think he's up for the challenge. He seems like a guy that's team first mentality and can be that guy that's brings the team together in terms of offense and just as a as a guy, just as a person and in the locker room. So I think Tillman brings a ton of pluses, but to me, I think it's a bit of a reach to say he makes all rookie first team and maybe even all rookie second team. So I think it's going to be a gradual transition to the NBA level for him. I don't think this is a guy that just picks up a basketball and rolls right into the next level at a pretty steady pace. So as with the entire Nets season, I think there's going to be ups and downs along the road because, well, when you're looking at a team that's going to win about 20 games, the ups aren't going to last for very long. So let's see if they do for Yegor Gioman. That would certainly be a pleasant surprise, though, if he was able to. And now, the next take from Lucas Kaplan is probably the one that most fans are intrigued about. Kaplan writes, Cam Thomas gets traded during the season. The most likely scenario where he would be traded is if he gets the qualifying offer, said Eric Slater, the host of the Locked On Nets show where the two guys were talking about this. So I think absolutely, just based off this first sentence, and we'll get into the rest, you take the $5.9 million qualifying offer, and it is so much more of a budget-friendly option in terms of other teams being able to trade for you. If you're getting paid upwards of $20 million a season, which the reports is what Cam Thomas is looking for, you're going to have trouble in terms of other teams seeing enough value in you to take on a contract like that, especially if you're above the mid-level exception, which Thomas would be there. So if he doesn't come back on the qualifying offer, it's going to be tough for the Nets to deal him. And if the Nets don't deal him, it's going to be tough to look at this as a plus at all for Sean Marks because get a guy on an expiring deal that really it seems like has no interest in staying with Brooklyn at this point. And you don't trade him for anything, he becomes an unrestricted free agent next year. And you lose out on the value you potentially could have had with a guy like Thomas. So I think just based off that first sentence, I think that is a good place to start in terms of the thought process. But let's see what Kaplan has to say about Thomas getting traded in season instead of before the season. He says, this one is easier to see. Thomas doesn't seem too happy with the Nets. With how the Nets are valuing him. Though Slater and I agree that the chances of CT actually taking the qualifying offer are around 30% at best. But this take, like the one that follows it, is based on the fact that Brooklyn has so many rotational players that rightfully feel entitled to minutes, many of them young and craving development. Jordy Fernandez himself has said there's no substitute for real minutes for a young player. He later goes on to say, do the Nets see Thomas as a valuable piece long-term after the signals they sent with their draft full of quick decision players? They've never directly said or done anything to indicate they don't like Thomas as a player, but maybe the tea leaves are blowing out of Brooklyn for their 2021 first-round pick. Maybe it's whether other teams want to take the flyer. Look, Cam Thomas, in an ideal world, does not want to take the qualifying offer, but to me, I think that's what it comes down to at this point. And I've been on this train for a couple of weeks now. The fact that we've seen no progress from inside the Nets building. The reports are they're not getting closer to a deal. If anything, they're getting further away, and they're not moving closer to an agreement. So, to be honest, the longer this thing goes on, the more likely it seems that Thomas comes back on the qualifying offer and he's gone before the season starts. But, just to play devil's advocate here, would Thomas get his guaranteed money, stay in Brooklyn for another 2 to 3 years, exit that stage of his career in his prime, being looked at as a little bit of a toxic player? And do you think he would rather that, or he would rather come back on the qualifying offer, get traded away to another team, and then re-sign with that team and get his bag, in the offseason? To me, I think he wants to be paid up front. The injuries have been a problem in the past, so obviously he doesn't want anything to get re-aggravated there and then miss out on a boatload of money, or at least what he and his agency think he deserves. So for Thomas's perspective, he wants that big contract today, but Sean Marks in the front office has continued to stand strong. They are not budging at all, and at this point, the qualifying offer just seems like a happy medium where at least both sides can agree on something. If it's not a long-term resolution, if Cam Thomas' time is done in Brooklyn, at least, Nets can get a little bit of trade value out of him. And then let's say he does come back on the qualifying offer. It would make sense to trade him as soon as you possibly can because the more value he has, there's no risk of him getting injured between now and the start of the season. There's also, his trade value could fall during the season if he doesn't play well, if he gets benched for some reason. So basically nothing good can come out of him for holding him for a long time. And I think Sean Marks knows that. And I think Sean Marks knows that Cam Thomas does not fit in this Nets team's long-term plans at this juncture in the negotiation stage. So Sean Marks, I think if Cam Thomas agrees to come back on the qualifying offer, Sean Marks says immediately you're on the trade block, immediately starts calling teams up looking for interest in Cam Thomas. And this is one I have a harder time seeing than definitely the other two that are going to come after it. To me, Cam Thomas comes back on the qualifying offer. Boom, Nets are already looking to trade him off. They're already looking for suitors. They're looking for buyers. They're looking for whatever they can get because Cam and this Nets front office aren't coming closer. That's not what they're doing. So I think Sean Marks realizes and recognizes that, and he tries to get Cam Thomas out here as fast as he can while his value is still somewhat existent. Because again, you wait till he's in the season. First of all, the team that's trading for him is getting a half season less of Thomas. So overall, they're going to want to pay you less because they're going to have to pay him a real contract coming up. And then On top of that, you risk injury, you risk poor play. Basically, holding him into the season can only decrease his stock. The best thing you can do if you're the Brooklyn Nets, he comes back on the qualifying offer. You hope he's dropping high 20s, close to 30s, and you maybe get an extra something sprinkled in there. But look, the reality of the situation is that's not how it's going to turn out to be. And you try and get as much value for Cam Thomas while you know he's healthy and while you know that he's still under your control and nothing bad will turn out. So Sean Marks tries to get this deal done as soon as he can, as soon as Cam Thomas and the Nets front office agree to a qualifying offer. To me, the relationship continues to be spoiled by the day, and this Nets team has a lot of trouble holding him past day one of the regular season down in Charlotte. Smash the like button, hit subscribe if you're just tuning in right here on the channel, you guys. Your support means a ton to us over here at the Brooklyn Boys Show. Connor landed in Italy, as I told you last night, on the beach right now, but it is about 3 a.m. in Italy, I think it is, or they're 7 hours ahead, I think they are. So definitely a big time difference for him to adjust to. So we'll see if we can get him on the show later in the week, but that might not be something for the foreseeable future until he is touched down back in these United States. But smash like, hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Throw any and all questions, comments, thoughts, reactions into the chat right there. I want to hear from you guys. The most valuable members of our community are you guys, the listeners. So throw your questions, comments, thoughts in the chat. I will react to all those in just a couple minutes. React to some of these hot takes by Lucas Kaplan on Locked On Nets with Eric Slater's, where these takes are coming from right over in the chat. Appreciate your support. We got Jonathan chatting in a couple times, which we'll get to in just a second. Lucas's next net hot take. He says Dariq Whitehead is not a net by next offseason. Let's get into it and then react. This is a bit of a two-part one. He says, you almost forget that Whitehead was a first-round pick just 2 seasons ago, one of the youngest players in franchise history at the time of his selection, and he just turned 21. Not ancient, but no longer a young NBA prospect. He hasn't shown anything, even turning a fairly unproductive G League season in 2025. Not super encouraging. Still, supporters will point to the fact that he hasn't had a true healthy offseason since he was going into his senior year of high school. Whitehead himself will tell you that the most worrisome part of his game, a lack of explosion and burst, will eventually come back. He just needs time. But the history of first-round picks who produced this little in the first 2 years, extenuating circumstances or not, are not too kind, unfair as they may be to Whitehead. Maybe he's packaged in a trade. Maybe he's just waived to make room for a newcomer. I almost went a double whammy and threw in his fellow 2023 draftee Jalen Wilson as a part of this take. Wilson might be an even less inspiring athlete with no injury history to boost, but as a second-round pick, the expectations are far lower. Gun to my head, I don't think this one comes true, but that's the battle Dariq Whitehead is fighting these days. Obviously, you have to start up front at the injury standpoint from Dariq Whitehead, and honestly, I feel a little bit bad for the guy. He's never gotten his fair run at the NBA level. He's been injured. I think he played 20 games last season on the basketball court, so you got to feel for the guy. It's not his fault, but the injuries have come to bite him. And when you have an explosive guard, as Kaplan outlines in this article, and you get a gruesome long-term leg injury, that automatically eliminates, some of the speed and the boost and the hops you're going to get into your game. And as a crafty, smaller end guard, that's huge. That is a game wrecker for you and for your career, honestly, because you have teams that feel uninspired to give you playing time when some of your best attributes are limited due to injuries off the court. So it's awful for Dariq Whitehead, and he hasn't gotten his fair run in the NBA, but it is do or die for Dariq Whitehead this year, and there's no other way to put it, because if he doesn't play well this year, if the injuries continue to linger, the Nets have a lineup of guys out the door waiting for a spot that Dariq Whitehead has on this roster. And I think he has a spot on this roster because in order to cut him, you need to fully evaluate him. And the Nets have gotten nowhere close to that. They barely have any NBA film to work off of, and he's shown his bright spots. in the league when healthy. It's been limited time, but he has shown his bright spots, has Dariq Whitehead. So you can't deny that fact, but you can deny the fact that you can roll with the fact that Dariq Whitehead hasn't gotten his fair chance at the NBA level. The Nets don't have enough to say in order to say, yeah, it's time to move on from you, because really they haven't seen him enough. We haven't, as fans, seen him enough either. So, you hope the injuries resolve soon as a 2022 draftee or 2023 draftee. You hope the injuries resolve soon, but if they don't, it is boom or bust for Dariq Whitehead, and that boom is going to have to be a pretty big explosion if he wants to solidify himself on this Brooklyn roster moving forward, because one good half season, being a solid role player on this team, and the injuries continue to linger, Nets don't want to hear about it anymore. The Nets front office, the Nets coaching staff are tired of hearing about Dariq Whitehead and his injuries. So he's got to force them to shut up. He's got to force them to say, oh, yeah, well, this guy's shown us way too much when he's been healthy to warrant him being cut and, to warrant us giving away his roster spot. So he's shown enough. Hopefully he can stay healthy. He's not at that juncture yet, and he hasn't earned his way up to that juncture yet. So he needs to stay healthy. He needs a huge, huge season. And then at the end of this take from Lucas Kaplan that Dariq Whitehead is not a net by next offseason, he also throws in Jalen Wilson, a second-round pick back in the 23 draft, when obviously the Nets didn't have 2024 picks. So these are the two most recent draft picks by the Brooklyn Nets. So obviously a lot of intrigue to be had there. Jalen Wilson, the former Summer League MVP, but another guy that has not shown you enough to warrant himself having a roster spot. A guy that, as Lucas says, might be an even less inspiring athlete with no injury history to boot, but as a second-round pick, the expectations are far lower. And to me, Jalen Wilson's got to turn some things around, or his career, like Dariq Whitehead, is going to be off to the dump extremely soon, probably sooner than expected. You're listening to the Brooklyn Boys Show live on YouTube. We appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button and hit subscribe right here on the show. Load any, questions, comments, thoughts in the chat. We got one more take to react to right after this break. A word from our presenting sponsor, Shoreline Sports Cards. Like and subscribe. It's the Brooklyn Boys Show live on YouTube.
You are listening to the Brooklyn Boys Show with your host, Connor Long. If you're enjoying the show, drop us a sub and leave a like. It helps more Nets fans find us. Quick break, then back to talking Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Today's episode of the Brooklyn Boys Show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Shoreline Sports Cards, located at 137 Main Street in Port Washington, New York. Whether you're chasing the newest hobby boxes, grabbing singles, or just want to talk cards with fellow collectors, Shoreline is the spot. They've got a massive selection across basketball, football, baseball, and more, with new inventory hitting the shelves every single week. If you're local, make sure to stop by the shop at 137 Main Street in Port Washington and check it out for yourself. If you're not in the area, no worries at all. You can still keep up with Shoreline by following them on Instagram, eBay, and whatnot for product drops, live breaks, deals, and hobby updates. All links are right in the description down below. Huge thanks to Shoreline Sports Cards for supporting the show and the Brooklyn Nets community.
It is the Brooklyn Boys Show coming to you live here on this Thursday, August 21st evening at the 9:30 hour of things. Appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like, hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Your support means a ton. Be like Jonathan, load up questions, comments, thoughts right over in the chat for me to react to in just a little bit. We were through the Yegor Gioman pick, the Cam Thomas, not pick, but hot take, Dariq Whitehead, and now probably Lucas Kaplan's fiery take, and he saved the best for last. He says, Brooklyn does not win 20 games in 2025 to 26. We get to react to that here. Looking around the Eastern Conference, this one gets tough, but Slater mapped it out on the pod. Brooklyn's first game is against the Charlotte Hornets. Their 12th game is against the Washington Wizards, but those games bookend a stretch where teams exclusively where the team, exclusively faces playoff hopefuls, if not playoff locks. They do not seem likely to start 9-10 in 2025-26 as they did last season. Furthermore, with only one first-round pick, their own, the tank will be on from the get-go. Better yet, they can tank without being too shameless early on. Rookies will be bad. Great. Michael Porter Jr. is worse than Cam Johnson in a similar role. Great. Like it or not, there is no greater incentive for Brooklyn this season than to secure a top 3 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. They will play the odds game, and luckily for them, their second incentive, develop the rookies, goes hand in hand with the first. Once again, Brooklyn will be very bad this season, but armed with young players who might actually be part of this team's long-term future. They can at least be worth watching, even if the team only goes 18-64, says Lucas Kaplan. A lot to unpack here, but Lucas starts off by talking about that first 12 games of the season, and you have two lottery teams like Charlotte and Washington, and then you get into a brutal stretch, and it's to start the season where the Nets were great last year, like the home openers against Cleveland, the former number 1 seed in the East just a season ago, so that's going to be a really tough one, and I can pull up the schedule, but as Jonathan and I named it about a week ago, then we get to December, merry tank month. And if the Nets are losing those games at the beginning of the December calendar, they're not winning anything. And I mean anything. I mean, this Nets team has certainly the capacity to be an 18-win basketball team, certainly the capacity to be worse than an 18-win basketball team. And on this team's list for how this season needs to play out, number 1, secure a top 3 lottery pick in 2026. That has to be the objective of the season, whether you like it or not. Obviously, you in the Nets building, they're going to tell you they want to win as many basketball games as they can. They want to win the NBA title. That's the goal every year. But let's be realistic. This Nets team probably on paper has the worst roster in the NBA. Definitely bottom 5, if not the worst in the entire league. So you go that route, you need a bottom 3 pick in the league. And this Nets team is not going to make any more moves to try and make themselves a better basketball team now. At the offseason, they want to be as bad as possible, try and get as high of a pick as possible. And while doing that, Lucas adds, you can get your second objective also out of the way at the same time. Isn't that awesome? The two, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, is the old saying. You knock down 2 3-pointers with 1 shot. But if you're the Nets, you also want to get these rookies valuable playing time. Like Lucas Kaplan says, the only substitute for NBA games is NBA games. You cannot simulate this stuff in practice. The best way to develop young talent is get them on the court and develop them on the basketball floor. And this isn't a thing that happens in the lab. This is a thing that happens, and the team will grow with experience. They will get stronger. They'll get more resilient, and they'll overall be better prepared for their futures in the NBA and be better adjusted than coming out of college or coming from overseas. But to cut to the chase, this Nets team isn't going to be good. They want to develop their rookies, but in doing so, you are going to sacrifice a lot of wins for a very inexperienced Nets basketball team that is going to show flashes at times. I'm sure going to see runs because it's Jordi Fernandez and a good coaching staff. So you'll see streaky basketball at times. To me, this is more of a 23, 24-win team, and I've been saying that for a little while now because I believe good coaching can elevate a team to 3 or 4 wins throughout the course of the season, and that's just about what it would take to get from this 18, 19 win mark into the early 20s, 22, 23 win mark. And I believe that the Nets have good enough coaching to do that. And I believe that a couple of these rookies, and I'm thinking at least 2 of them, specifically if I had to put names on it, probably Dioman and Traore or Powell. I believe at least 2 of these rookies will come in and play at least somewhat decently to start off their NBA careers. I'm not asking them to go out there and be all-stars. I'm not asking them to go out there and be all-rookie first team, as Eric Slater alluded to beginning of this article. But I think that a smooth transition would go over well for the entire team, because not only does it show that these guys are getting acclimated to the pros properly and in a timely order, but it also make sure that, it's not a bumpy ride for everybody. If you got a couple guys that, don't need as much training time and don't need as much game time to get fully adjusted to the new level as you would have originally thought, it doesn't just make them better and make their outlook better, but it also smooths out the bumps for the guys behind them that do need a little more time to get acclimated, because you have five guys that's come into the league struggling, and it's going to be an issue to try and get all five acclimated. But 2, 3 of these guys come in and play well off the jump, you're looking at an easier time for the guys behind them to get playing time, because you've already built that trust with a couple of those higher end guys. So to me, I'm looking for a couple of these Nets rookies to have good starts to their NBA career off the jump. It's way too ambitious for me to say, while it is the hope, it's too ambitious for me to say that, 4. Hello, do we have me in the chat? Do we have me? Excuse the technical difficulty. My mic cut out there and got disattached to the computer for some reason. But if you're in the chat, let me know if you can hear me, because on my end it says the audio is working. Jonathan says yes. Appreciate you, Jonathan, sticking with us through the technical difficulties. So thank you for letting me know there. But back to where we were after the little 30-second audio cutout. We are back on the show. Glad you can all hear me. Smash like, hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. But where was I talking about this team being a 18-win team according to Lucas Kaplan? I talked about how I thought that the rookies need to get acclimated to the pros, but good coaching wins you games, man. Good coaching wins you games. Again, Lucas Kaplan writes that article from his what he talked about with Eric Slater on the Locked On Nets podcast. Check that out. I'll throw the links to that in the description below after the stream is over. So check those out if you haven't yet. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Locked On Nets and Eric Slater's work over there, friend of the show. So check him out if you haven't yet. Now to your questions, comments, thoughts, which you guys can submit in the chat. Jonathan starts us off up top saying, it's unfortunate Cam and the Nets front office couldn't find a common ground for 4 years now, and it's obvious Marks doesn't value him as a core piece, but a resolution looks bad. I wouldn't say that they haven't been able to find common ground for 4 years, because this issue, I think the Nets had full confidence in Cam Thomas when he entered the league. And obviously there was times in the organization where you were sitting him after a 40-point game, which never looked good on the coach's end, on the organization's end. But I think heading into the league and at the beginning of his career, this Nets team had confidence in Cam Thomas. So I don't think it stems all the way back to the beginning, but it is very unfortunate that Marks and Cam have not been even close to agreements from what we're hearing from people inside the building. So we'll probably get a better tell at this during training camp when media availability opens up and reporters, can freely ask away at questions. So we'll get a ton more tell when that begins in the middle of September, but that's about a month away from now on August 21st. So it might be a little bit till we figure out if and how that resolution is at all going to be taking place. Sign and trade ideas look very thin unless the Bucks are open to dealing Kuminga and a first for Cam. But if CT takes $6 million, the Nets can base stomach Marks flipping him for a minimal return. Absolutely, Jonathan. If you fully extend Cam Thomas to a brand new fresh contract and take him off the restricted free agent market, probably be close to a 3-year deal, probably be close to $20 million, if not upwards of there, because that's what truthfully he's looking for right now. But if you're gonna give him that kind of contract, the expectation that you're gonna find takers for a trade on that, you got to be crazy. So he comes back on the $5.9 million qualifying offer. That's only $6 million against team's cap and well below the mid-level exception. Twice, almost three times. I forgot what the MLE is this offseason, but I think it's close to $20 million, give or take a couple million in either direction. But yeah, absolutely. If Thomas comes back on the qualifying offer, you can absolutely see a scenario where you got a lot of bidders in the market for him. But if you're just talking about re-signing him on a standard contract for 2 more or 3 more years, you're going to have trouble finding takers there. Let's see Jonathan once more. Josh, if Cam takes the $6 million, could he veto any trade? And Marks could tell the coaching staff to bench him to let young guys develop, but isolate Cam further and create more drama. I mean, boy, what a plot that would be and what a storyline that could be. Jonathan suggesting that Cam Thomas takes $6 million and then asks for himself to be benched just doesn't seem like it's adding up here for a guy that was suggesting he'd be paid close to $40 million earlier this offseason. So, no, I cannot see this happening, but also no, Cam Thomas would not be able to veto trades if he comes back on this qualifying offer. He does not have a no trade clause that he gets to decide where he gets shipped off to. He does not have a no trade clause that he's able to waive for whatever select team he picks, whatever contending team he wants to ring chase with. So, no, that would not be able to happen. But Sean Marks can do just about whatever he wants if Thomas comes back on this qualifying offer. I think Cam Thomas would rather ball out, score close to 30 a night, chuck up as many shots as he can get as big of a contract as he can get, rather than have these Nets young guys develop, because honestly, I don't think Cam Thomas has any interest in the Brooklyn Nets winning anything soon, as obviously not if he is not on this team. Keep your questions, comments flowing. I only got Jonathan's questions here, so if you want yours to be read out on screen, throw those in the chat. Now, appreciate you tuning in. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Approaching the 40-minute mark of the show here. Let's see. Wonder if we'll see Drew Timmy, Tyrese Martin, Derek Whitehead, or Jalen Wilson get flipped for a second-round pick or something minimal to lower the roster crunch soon. Absolutely, Jonathan, and I think this is something we could be seeing throughout camp, throughout preseason. Sean Marks stays active on the phone line and the trade line. I think out of these four, Drew Timmy, Derek Whitehead, probably the two that the Brooklyn Nets are most interested in keeping around just to see what they have, and because their potential seems definitely a lot higher than Martin and Wilson. But second round pick for any of the latter three guys is appealing to me, especially if you're talking about a lottery team, not a second round pick that's going to be in the late 50s, but one you're talking about 31 through 37, and I'm all in for Jalen Wilson and Tyrese Martin. No problem taking those guys off my hands for a second round pick or two if I'm Sean Marks in the Nets. But again, something we'll see throughout training camp preseason. If these roster bubble guys have had their draft stock go up, or excuse me, their trade stock rise, and if not, maybe that's just the Nets getting a sign there that maybe it's not their trade stock going up, maybe it's their rosterable stock going up, and you have people coming into the people coming into the comments, people coming into the roster fold that you didn't originally think there. But Jonathan, I absolutely get where you're coming from. I think having too many bodies in training camp, you're going to have to cut one guy at least as it is, because you're one over the training camp maximum roster, and that's without having Cam Thomas under contract. So you're likely going to have to cut or trade two guys before training camp can even begin for you there. But I think Jordi Fernandez in this front office would have a ton of interest in getting rid of at least some of guys, whether it's waiving them, whether it's finding a trade partner for a couple of these guys, because, too many bodies, it's a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. You might not be able to get a fair evaluation of everyone if you have, you're overflowing the limit as it is. So you don't want too many bodies heading in to your pre-training camp roster. So you're going to have to cut down now. You're going to have to cut down right before the NBA season starts. I could absolutely see a trade for any one of those four guys, but up to me, Drew Timme would probably be the safest out of that crew. Let's see. Trae Young, Michael Porter Jr.'s old basketball buddy, said he could get $25 million easy this season, or 25 points easy this season, excuse me. You agree he could possibly do that without Cam, and you think Young has interest in Brooklyn. So a two-part question here. For Michael Porter Jr., I think absolutely. 25 points a game seems feasible for him. Let's see, if he can put the podcasting and the media to the side for a little bit. But as we discussed in yesterday's The Athletic offseason report, Michael Porter Jr. is going to have the green light from the get-go in Brooklyn. They want him to take a high volume of shots. They want him to feel confident in his game. And 25 points a night, you're talking about a guy that's going to be paid close to $40 million this season and next. So the Nets want him to make as big of an impact as he can. And I think absolutely 25 million a night. But could Trae Young have interest in Brooklyn? Absolutely, I think Trae Young has interest in Brooklyn. Here's a guy that is probably not going to stick with Atlanta, a team that's just been a play-in squad his entire life, except for that 1 year when they went on that magic run. And Trae Young had every Knicks fan hate him for the rest of eternity. But other than that season where they played a couple savvy games at the Garden in the playoffs, the Hawks these past couple years have been disappointing. And so I could see him having interest in Brooklyn just because, the amount of cap space they have available. Nets have the most in the league this offseason, probably going to have some of the most next offseason because it's not like you're bringing in expensive contracts outside of Michael Porter Jr. and outside of Nick Claxton. So, yeah, the Nets have money to work with. So that obviously is going to be intriguing for Trae Young as a guy that wants to get paid as much money as he can. And that's honestly probably what he's more worried about, getting paid, than he is winning as many basketball games as he can, because that's the modern juncture of the NBA game. So I think he has interest in Brooklyn, but I don't think it reciprocates. I do not think the Nets have interest in going after Trae Young at this point in the rebuild. It's way too early to dive headfirst back into the superstar pool. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. It takes away opportunities to develop some of your young guys. You don't get a fair assessment of what you have with the squad now. You don't get a fair assessment of hopefully your top 5, top 3, maybe even the first overall pick, for God's sakes, in the 2026 NBA draft. So we'll see how it plays out. But no, I do not think I do not think Young will be coming to Brooklyn. But I do think MPJ for sure has a chance to score 25 a night. Goals for the Nets should be to allow each of the rookies adequate playing time to develop their games, secure a lottery spot that they can get in the top 5, and build up trade value for the vets. Yes, yes, and yes. I don't think the adequate playing time for the young guys needs to come, right off the jump, right? You know, as soon as the season starts, let's get Ben Soroff significant minutes in the rotation. Let's throw Danny Wolf into the fire of the center spot. I don't think that's how it needs to play out, but let's be honest, Jonathan, going off of your last sentiment there, build up trade value for the vets. I think a lot of vets on this team are gone by training camp or gone by the deadline. So this second half Nets team is going to be a shrunken down roster in terms of age and in terms of guys taking up playing time from the younger guys that need to develop. So we'll absolutely see. There's a lot to be desired here for this season, Jonathan. And I think that just a offshoot of the Nets getting trade value for the vets at the deadline is that it opens up more space for younger guys in the second half to have big seasons and at least to see the court enough to get to the point where we know what we're looking at with these guys. Excuse me, I had to cough there. Jonathan back at it. Nets might be able to get the Hornets and the 76ers game, but I see 2-10 as a realistic outcome. And Merry Tank Month looks like vacation for this Nets fan base and the team. Look, we'll be having live pre- and post-game coverage of almost every game coming up this season, so stay tuned for that. Can't wait for it. And even if this Nets team is looking ridiculously bad and there's not a ton to be happy about, we'll still be bringing you guys coverage because guys are the best fans in the world. But that start of the season is going to be brutal. I think the Nets could absolutely snag an opening day win against the Charlotte Hornets, a very weak Eastern Conference opponent that finished with the 4th pick in this draft to have to get Con Knippel onto that squad. But, to me, Hornets, Sixers seem winnable. I'm actually pretty high on the Sixers in regards to consensus, so that might be a tough one for me. But 2-10 out of the first 12 games seems extremely realistic, especially for a team that 20 wins might be a high note at this point, which is kind of crazy to say. But as bad as this Nets team we think could be, they could be really bad. And it is allergy season up here in the great state of Maine, so your boy's having to use a couple too many tissues that I wouldn't like. I gotta get on some I gotta get to the drugstore soon and get some allergy medicine. Say what's up to everybody in the chat. Beeman Boy 81, appreciate you tuning in. Great to see you in the live chat. JCBK all day, back-to-back appearances in the chat for him. Appreciate you tuning in. Says, feel bad for Dariq Whitehead, but Sean Marks has a tendency to take flyers on injured players or those coming off of injuries. If there's one thing to say about this Nets team, they have the playing time and they have the ability to allocate minutes to guys that might not be deserving of it and might not be deserving of a second chance in the NBA. If there's any team that could in this league, it's the Brooklyn Nets. It's Sean Marks and his front office, because this team, frankly, isn't going to win games. Probably doesn't want to win many games if we're looking at things truthfully. So they're one of the few teams in this league that has the ability to allocate minutes to guys that probably elsewhere would have no chance and would be forgotten at this point in their careers. But let's see. Hopefully, man, for Dariq Whitehead, for this Nets team, for his future in the league, trying to work towards that second contract. Hopefully, Dariq Whitehead has a breakout season and leaves the injuries in the past and wows Nets fans. That's absolutely the hope, and that would be a huge plus if he could do that. Let's see here. Jonathan says, it was interesting today. I saw someone rate the Nets schedule with November being the toughest, but January looks very tough since the Nets will be on the road a lot, which is rough with the young core. Yeah, I think so. January, when you flip the calendar, is going to be a rough one, Jonathan. But hopefully by, 4 months into the season, this Nets team has somewhat adjusted to life on the road and is able to compete outside of the Barclays Center and is able to compete every night on the basketball floor. Let's be honest here, but it could be tough. I know November's a tough schedule too, but that's just, to me, I'm really focused right now on getting through this first rough stretch of the season, which, let's be honest here, there are many for a not good Nets team. There are going to be a lot of rough stretches. I'm focused on getting through preseason, getting through training camp, and, sifting through a little bit of this opening day, opening week, opening fortnight vibes there, if you will. So, to have your eyes worried right now about January's schedule, it's a little silly to me, Jonathan. It's just a little bit silly because look, every Nets game worries me. I don't think you go into one Nets game this season and go, at least we know we're winning tonight. At least we know we're winning tonight. I don't think that happens at all this season. Not once. So, to have 82 games and to go into every night, probably not favored by the sports book, probably with the public against you, probably a lot of times other teams already having you marked on their schedule as a win for them and a loss for the Nets. It's a tough way to go about things, and it's the reality of how this season's going to go as another tanking season is coming on and coming about. But the one thing I'll say is it's fun to play as underdogs, no matter what sport it is. That's why the Miracle on Ice was so great, but it's fun to play as underdogs. And I think this Nets team, even if the record isn't great, hopefully they gel well. They have a solid locker room. Things look good. All I'm looking for is a developmental season and the outlook to look good. Let's get a light at the end of the tunnel, or at least a glimpse at the light throughout certain points of this season. That's the hope for this Brooklyn Nets season. Let's see. Yegor, Nolan, and Wolf having a decent, okay first season would be important to their development. And Drake Powell's an interesting project, but Ben Stroff is going to have to work on his game a lot. Yes, and yes. I agree with just about everything you said here. Nolan, Wolf, Yegor, I could see as guys coming in. Drake Powell, to me, is already has things set up on one end of the floor defensively. Drake Powell was awesome at UNC last year, and I really, really, really hope that translates to the next level, because that's something Jordi Fernandez's system thrives on, and that's something this Nets coaching staff is going to want to love to see is defensive effort, grit, hustle, determination, and being hungry, wanting to be on the basketball floor for this team, wanting to earn your minutes, wanting to score, wanting to win basketball games. So I think Drake Powell has the mindset. I think he's got things on the defensive end of the floor. If he can translate that and work on his three ball and just be an all right scorer, I think he brings a tremendous amount of value to this team. I compared him to an Alex Caruso type guy. And I think that, what Drake Powell could bring, even if he's not a great defender, or excuse me, not great on offense this season, in his rookie season, I still think he can bring you value defensively. And so that'll be a plus. As for Wolf, I'm not as confident in him. Let's see. That's definitely a guy that's going to be a big time temperature check when camp starts, when preseason starts. It's going to be interesting to see what he looks like, what the vibe around him is. But for now, it's just speculation with these guys. So Saraf's got to work on his game a lot. And as fans and analysts, we have a lot to see still coming up on this Nets team. We're getting ready to wrap up right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. A couple last comments from you guys before we hit it for tonight. Let's see. Sean Marks has turned the Brooklyn Nets into the Brooklyn Ward, quote unquote, with how many injured players he's taken high risk chances on. Yep. I mean, again, if there's any team to take risks on highly injured guys, it's the Brooklyn Nets at this point, because I mean it's a charity fund in terms of minutes at this point. Basically, anybody can get minutes on this Nets team. I don't think there's a single guy heading into this training camp roster that has no chance of making this roster whatsoever. Couple final comments. Nets getting one against the Knicks will be the highlight of the year. I think that it'll happen, Jonathan. I truly do think, because, even if this Nets team isn't great, it always feels good to get a rivalry win against the crosstown rivals. That's something I got to talk about on the show. The fact that Nets-Knicks is not on NBA Rivals Week. It's been on Rivals Week every freaking week for the past, I don't know how many number of years now, but come on, it's the crosstown rivalry. They would rather put the Cavs and the Charlotte Hornets on NBA Rivals Week before they would the Nets and the Knicks. NBA is doing themselves a disfavor. I mean, come on. I get it. Nets aren't going to be great this year, but show some love for the rivalry. I don't know why the Nets aren't on Rivalry Week, but I cannot wait for Nets-Knicks. Always electric. Hopefully, I've never been to a Knicks game at the Garden. Maybe that ends this year. I might just be able to sneak my way into the Garden, rep the Nets at a Knicks-Nets game there. That may be happening. So I'll keep you guys tuned there. I've never been to a Knicks game at the Garden. Never been to a Knicks game, period. So would be exciting to get the vibe at MSG. Obviously, I've been there before in my life. I went to Globetrotters. I've been to Rangers hockey there. But would be a ton of fun. Would be a blast to go see the Garden. I know we have some Knicks fans in the chat. Tell me what the Garden's like for some Knicks basketball. I'm sure the energy is electric, but let's hope that this Nets team can win at least one, maybe even two. Snag one on the road, snag one at the Barclays Center this year against the Knicks, and that would absolutely be a plus of what's likely going to be a down year. Josh, we push in the rivalry. That's the hope, Jonathan. That's the hope. Let's see if Adam Silver is tuned into the Brooklyn Boys Show, which I kind of doubt, but Adam Silver, if you're listening, let's get Knicks Nets on the rivalry week. And then another great discussion from Jonathan. Appreciate you and everyone else in the chat tuning in. Again, if you haven't yet, go down below this video, smash the like and hit subscribe, because it really, really, really does help us grow this channel tremendously. And your support means a ton right here on the program, helps us grow, helps push this content out, and helps you stay in the loop. So turn on those notifications so you don't miss when we go live, when we upload a new video. Like and subscribe. It would mean a ton to us right here at the Brooklyn Boys Show. Free, easy, takes 2 seconds. We talked about Eric Slater's hot takes for the next 2025 season. I got the pleasure of reacting to them and giving you my take on everything going on there. For you guys in the chat, all I got to say is one final thing before we wrap up on the show here. Let's go Nets. Good night, everybody, and peace out.